Welcome to the first episode of the Appregator Shopify App podcast. We're excited to have Noah Tucker, the founder of Social Snowball, here with us. In today's episode, Noah speaks about being a non-technical founder in the Shopify app space, emphasizes the importance of finding the right marketing channels for your app, and shares some of his best tips for growth. Let's get into it. Hey Noah, how's it going? Really excited to have you on the Appregator podcast, and excited to have this conversation with you. But just real quick before we get started, you want to introduce yourself and the app, just for the benefit of our listeners?
Yeah, of course. Well, first, thank you for having me. My name is Noah, and I'm the founder of Social Snowball.
You want to speak a little bit about what Social Snowball does and who your sort of core customer is?
Totally, yeah. So we're an affiliate platform for direct-to-consumer brands. We focus on converting your customers and owned audiences into affiliates, slightly different than the more legacy affiliate model of working with bigger publishers and influencers. We take the scalability of that affiliate marketing model and democratize it down to the consumer level.
Nice, very interesting. So yeah, just to kick things off, what sort of led you to the Shopify app ecosystem?
So before I even thought I was ever going to build an app, I come from the merchant side of the ecosystem. So, since right out of high school, I was building stores, doing a lot of marketing services for stores. So a lot of paid ads, building affiliate programs was a huge part of it as well. And I kind of was just doing that for many years, through college. Afterwards, I was building stores, doing consulting services for other stores, and just very focused on that whole merchant side of the ecosystem. That's kind of how I got involved in the Shopify world altogether. And then it eventually kind of led me to the app side eventually.
Got it. So that actually plays in perfectly with my next question is, how did you pick what problem you wanted to solve? Was it something that you saw when you were on the merchant side, or was it something that you heard from other folks? How did you sort of decide that, okay, this is what I want to go after?
It was fully to scratch my own itch. Since I had, come from the merchant side, and like I briefly said, I was building a lot of affiliate programs. So any store that I would work on, or if I was doing a consulting service or helping another brand, I would always, help them build an affiliate program. But the type of affiliate program I would build would be very customer focused. It wouldn't be like the more traditional affiliate model with publishers. So kind of like an ambassador program, but what we would do is we would actually take like the scalability of affiliate marketing, which is like, cash incentives and sending payouts, and bring that to customers. And the tech that existed just didn't make it very easy. And that's just one of the things that they made difficult was sending cash payouts at a massive scale. But there's a bunch of things that seemed like they should have been automated that were not automated. A lot of really unfriendly customer facing interface, and just like an unpleasant experience overall. So I had been using those affiliate tools that already existed in the Shopify ecosystem for many years. I even tried to kind of set up my own thing using like Zapier, connecting it to Klaviyo. And I mean, I wouldn't even call it an MVP. It wasn't even an app, but I just wanted to build some level of automation that wasn't doable with the tools that existed in the Shopify ecosystem. And after 3-4 years of just dealing with the tools that were out there and trying to make my own and being very frustrated, I started speaking to other e-commerce founders in my network, and it was pretty like unanimous that people were searching for a better affiliate tool. And even people who weren't building the exact types of affiliate programs I was, they were still pretty unhappy with the tools that existed in the space. And that's kind of when I realized like, oh, okay, there's actually something to be built here. But I don't come from a tech background whatsoever. So getting something off the ground, I could definitely talk about that. That was a bit of a nightmare. But that's kind of how the idea came to be.
Yeah, that, it's interesting because a lot of the players in the Shopify app or the Shopify app store tend to be, more tech focused, more developers. So no, I think that's definitely something I want to hear a little bit more about. But just leading into that, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced when you were getting started with the app?
Well, I mean, just being non-technical, like that made things really difficult. So like, I didn't know anything about software, anything about like product development, and all this was brand new to me. So I had a little bit of money, so I was able to bootstrap just from my e-commerce days. I had a little bit of money that I could put into this just to get something off the ground. So I found an agency that told me they could do like a done for you package where they would like build the entire MVP along with like the website UI UX, and I was like, oh, perfect, like that's exactly what I need. They told me it would take about 3 months to get an MVP like submitted to the Shopify App Store, and it took 15 months for me to terminate the contract with them early because something there still wasn't an MVP ready for the Shopify App Store. So that was obviously like incredibly frustrating to deal with. And then afterwards, I ended up hiring freelancers. We were able to get something. We were able to fix up the almost MVP that the agency created, get it submitted to the Shopify App Store, and then we at least had a working MVP. And then moving forward, I never had a technical co-founder from the beginning. So we do have a CTO now, which was also very difficult to find. But I would say like my biggest challenge getting off the ground, and even up until recently, was just not having that technical lead with me in the beginnings. And as I'm sure most people that you're interviewing probably are engineers themselves. So me not having that, and also not having a technical co-founder, I was definitely playing at a disadvantage throughout that entire time.
No, I can imagine it's pretty intimidating space to get started in. But just from there, so as you sort of scaled, and obviously right now you have loads of customers gone through a lot of that initial issue. How have you sort of structured it in terms of what role marketing plays in it? So I know when we speak to a lot of people, or the prevailing view in the ecosystem is that, especially getting started, the tech quality matters more. But as you scale and as you sort of get to a point where you're really happy and you have achieved some sort of product market fit, you're more focused on actually being in front of customers, like doing the customer service, doing the marketing. How do you sort of look at that in terms of your strategy, especially given that that's something your expertise is in?
Yeah, I mean, my brain is definitely a marketing brain. So like that's kind of what I focus my energy into. I would say as a business, we're still very product focused, and we invest probably over 10 times more into product than we do into marketing. But that being said, like what I contribute, what I bring to the table to the team is definitely like the marketing. So I mean, yeah, it's a huge role. I mean, we grew really, really quickly when we launched. Within 3 months, we were already at 10K MRR, which is crazy. And it was just from aggressively marketing, because from this is just me being naive and this being my first software product, but I just assumed that once we had an MVP, all we would have to do is market and that everyone was going to love it. And we barely have to build anything new. I knew we'd have to build a little bit, but I was like, oh, I'll just have like one developer working part-time, like building a feature here and there. That's how I imagined it. So once we did launch, I had a little bit of money saved up to spend on marketing, and I just deployed it all. And obviously, like we had a good product, like even the MVP was a good product because we did grow really fast and we retained those users. So it's not that the product didn't matter, but I did spend a lot of marketing and it did pay off well. So I mean, it played and still plays a huge role in the business. And I mean, now I say like we don't, like I'm saying we're very product focused, spending 10x more on product than we are on marketing. We still do a lot of free marketing stuff. So we're not neglecting marketing. We're very focused on branding. We definitely have built a really solid brand around ourselves on social media, which is really important. Even though that's not very expensive, it's time that you're investing, and it's other types of resources that you're investing besides money. So I mean, it plays a huge role, and we've played with every marketing channel that you could ever think of. So we got to kind of see what works well for us, what doesn't work well for us, and what works well for Social Snowball might not work well for another Shopify, and vice versa, because we learned the hard way through trial and error, like who our ICP is and where they are and how what we can do marketing wise to get in front of them. So kind of a long answer to your question, but it definitely plays a very important role.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And one piece you sort of touched upon was retaining customers. And I think there's sort of, at least the way I view it, there are a couple of parts to that, right? Like obviously you need a high quality product, because if your product isn't great, there's several others that are, and people will be happy to switch. I think what's interesting is and it's a point that a lot of categories are getting to in the Shopify app ecosystem, is that there's several products that are high quality and performing all the tasks you needed to. How do you sort of focus marketing efforts or branding efforts on just increasing loyalty and retention? Or how do you sort of think about that as part of the marketing strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like more so than marketing, it definitely is just having a great product. Although there are, debatably other solid affiliate platforms in the Shopify ecosystem, there's certain features that we have that other platforms don't have. So if a merchant is looking for like what we offer, then they're gonna stick to us because it's what we specialize in, it's what we do better than anyone else. So it definitely starts with product, but I mean beyond that, I'd say like support is incredibly important. So we, every Shopify app these days has really good live chat support, but we take it a step further, and especially with our larger clients, like our enterprise clients we make more money off of, that are just very important to us. We go a step further and we create a Slack Connect channel between our organization and their organization. We have like even faster than live chat response time within the Slack Connect channel. In most of the Slack Connect channels, like occasionally talking to merchants, which they obviously love. And we even assign them account managers, which will send their payouts for them, which is like an ongoing thing that when you have an affiliate program, you have to do. We make sending payouts really easy, but some merchants, especially a lot of big ones, don't even want to have to ever log into their interface. So we'll send their payouts for them and send them a report of the sent payouts in Slack. So they come from like, they switch over from one of these legacy tools in the Shopify App Store that like is notorious for like not great support, and they have to wait 2 days for an email back. And with us, they're talking to the CEO in the Slack channel and having an account manager log into their account and send their payouts for them, and making jokes with them in Slack and talking, direct to consumer marketing strategies. It's just a much different experience. So we really focus on support, and even in live chat, even with the merchants that we don't have that super hands-on experience with, like we're still, talking to people like they're people. We're making jokes, making things fun. We're definitely trying to really focus on support and making the experience for merchants through support as amazing as possible. I'd say that's probably our biggest tool in retention.
That's interesting. I think very, very interesting way to look at it. I'm curious though, that sort of answers for the most part my next question. But when it comes to differentiating from your competition, then would you say that features, and I know for Social Snowball, y'all do things slightly differently, and you'll have features that a lot of apps won't have. But when you look at apps that have sort of more similarities of solving a very niche pain point that then becomes slightly more commoditized, assuming that there are a couple of products in the same space which are doing the same thing, would you say that customer service is, according to you, the most important tool of differentiation and retention? Or would it still come down to innovating on product, or would it be a mix of both? How do you sort of think about that as well?
I mean, if we were to just like make up a scenario where there is another app that existed that was identical to Social Snowball just on the product side, I would say the two things that would still make us sticky would, one, be brand, because you can't fake brand. Like we are, reputable. We've partnered with a lot of Shopify apps much bigger than us, and we're partnered with agencies that everyone knows about. So like we have that brand, that reputation that took over a year to build, and we're still building it every day. So that people like us and they trust us and they know us. So that's like one thing that you can't fake, and that will always be helping us. And then two, yeah, I'd say support. I'd say support is really important. But I mean, this is also in the hypothetical situation that our product is identical to other products out there, which is not the case. So people I know stay because of the product. And at the end of the day, that's the one thing that we'll always have.
Kind of makes sense. So I think one thing, that I've learned from you and just following you on Twitter is just generally how to sort of run influence marketing campaigns for Shopify apps. I know that's not a very common strategy, and not a strategy a lot of people employ, but we'd love to hear a little bit more about your perspective on that.
Oh, I mean, influencers have driven a significant part of our growth. A very significant chunk of our installs have come from influencers. I definitely, to be fully transparent, had a leg up on other apps to work with influencers because my time in the merchant side of the e-commerce world, I built relationships with all these influencers, and I'm very close friends with a lot of influencers. So people that are like a little bit harder to reach, or maybe they would want to charge like tens of thousands of dollars for a video, I could text them and they'll make a video and include me in it as a favor, which is definitely like an unfair advantage that I had. But that being said, I took advantage of that because that's an advantage I have. Of course, I'm not going to not take advantage of that. So I did take advantage of that in the beginning, and then I saw how well it performed. And then moving forward, recently we've been mostly product focused, but for a long time we were investing in new influencer partnerships, and I was cold DMing people on TikTok and YouTubers and just trying to get new partnerships because we already kind of exhausted the audiences of the people in my immediate circle, and I knew that it performed well, so I was like, okay, we have to scale this to a bigger level. So yeah, I mean, working with influencers is definitely something all Shopify apps should be doing. The cool thing is that not a lot are, so the ones who do will stand out, and they'll be able to tap into audiences and a piece of the market that is not really being advertised to a lot. So like TikTok, for example, like there's a huge side of TikTok that's just like e-commerce TikTok and Shopify TikTok. So there's a ton of creators in the space, obviously, that have big followings, and all their videos get pushed out to that side of TikTok. And if you could, reach out to them and have them create content for you, like it's super powerful because just not that many apps are doing it. And that's kind of the lowest hanging fruit. Like with TikTok, you don't really have to pay a lot for a video, and a lot of the creators on TikTok aren't making a lot of money anyway, so they're very happy to work with anyone. YouTube is a little bit, there's a little bit more of a barrier to entry just because the people on YouTube usually are making a lot of money already, and they will charge a lot more for a video. In most cases, you could obviously find some like micro influencers that will do a video for like $1,000, but it's just a little bit more difficult.
Interesting strategy, especially I come from marketing background as well. I ran my own agency for a while, worked D2C merchant side, worked in venture capital for a bit. And when I thought about marketing for Shopify apps, my mind goes straight to Reddit, goes straight to sort of blogs, case studies, some of the more generic things that you would do typically for like SaaS or like enterprise software. So no, I do think it's very interesting how you're thinking about leveraging influencers for something like this. Moving on to slightly more generic questions as we get to the end of this. What would be the one or two things that you say excite you the most about the Shopify app ecosystem moving ahead, say for the next decade or so?
That's a great question. I mean, I think it's just really cool. Well, one, I'm really happy that Shopify is no longer taking that 20%. I think that, I mean, they knew what they were doing there. It was a very smart move on their part. They were really like, their whole goal is to make e-commerce better for the merchant. And by doing this, more developers will build apps, and they'll compete with each other, and they'll build better apps, and then it'll be a better experience for merchants. And that's where their money is made. So it was a really cool move to see Shopify do that. A lot of businesses would not take that step. I'd say like, since they've done that, obviously the App Store has grown a ton. I'm excited to see how it continues to grow. I mean, I guess this is kind of the most like vanilla answer I could give to your question, but I've seen so many really cool Shopify apps. I mean, and this is really all just on Twitter, but in the past like 6 months to a year, I've seen so many really cool Shopify apps pop up and post on Twitter and just ideas that I've never thought of. And I could tell people are like, more motivated than ever to create Shopify apps, and people who are not coming from tech backgrounds whatsoever, like myself, can now build and create for the Shopify ecosystem. So I mean, I'm just very excited to see how that continues to develop over the next few years. I have some theories. I'm not sure if it's gonna continue to grow at the rate that it is, or if like I always see 100 upsell apps being created every day. It seems like it's like, how many upsell apps could there be? So I'm curious to what happens when everyone is making like the same app essentially, but at the same time, it's going to just create more competition, and the best one is gonna win. So I'm definitely curious to see how like that evolves over the next couple of years.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's at the space where suddenly it's generating a lot of attention. Totally. And it's going to be interesting to see how that consolidation or fragmentation happens in the next few years. Last question. What advice would you have for someone just getting started in the app ecosystem? As you mentioned, lots of new apps being created every day, a lot of people sort of looking for ways to enter the market. What advice do you have for them?
Biggest one, and I talk about this on Twitter all the time, stop relying on the App Store for traffic and installs. Like, the App Store is one partner. Think of it as one partner. Obviously, it's an important one, but it's one partner. You should have 100 partners, and you're relying on all of them equally. The App Store is good for bringing you traffic, and you shouldn't neglect optimizing and ranking, but it can't be your only, and maybe it used to be, because I'm also a newbie to the Shopify app world. Like, my app went live like a year and 4 months ago or something like that. So it's not like I've been around for 5 years, but I've heard that in the past, you could just really focus on ranking and you will get like 50 installs a day on autopilot, and if you have your retention on lock, like it'll just scale to the moon like that. And that's awesome, but that's like a world that I never even experienced. Like since the day I launched Social Snowball, it was not possible, or maybe it was possible, but it wasn't for me, at least, to just like optimize an app store listing and scale to the moon. And I think a lot of app developers are scared to try their own marketing, and they just want to focus on the app store optimization because they're worried that it's expensive. And a lot of, especially in the Shopify ecosystem, there's so many indie developers and bootstrappers, and people don't want to have to like take money from the business and invest it into marketing because they're scared to. But like what I always tell people is like there's a lot of really, really cheap, low-hanging fruit marketing activities that you can do that not only one will get you installs and traffic, but it'll two build brand reputation. So like, for example, I always talk about like co-marketing partnerships. It's such low-hanging fruit. Like just create a blog, start creating content, and then partner with other apps or agencies and write content for their blog, have them write content for your blog. Then you guys share it on each channel. So you can do features within the app. You could have a partner directory. Little like co-marketing partnerships like that are basically free and can be pretty significant needle movers in as far as traffic and installs, and will undeniably be building your brand, because people will associate your logo next to another logo, and maybe they've seen that logo before and they trust that logo, and they see that you're partnered with them, and it'll just build that reputation. So, to make a very long story short, don't just rely on the app store. There is like cheap, low-hanging fruit that you can be taking advantage of, and I like really think all app developers should be.
I love it. That's great advice. But yeah, thank you so much, Noah, for giving us time. Really appreciate it. This was very, very helpful, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners will agree with that as well. So appreciate it. Best of luck with the app, and yeah, I look forward to speaking soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.